Okay, today in LQ, we were doing some review of factoring and solving equations. And I'm just doing a quick recap because unfortunately I had some technical difficulties with my recording. So here's three problems we focused on. One kind of problem was where you end up just having to try to figure out what is in each part. Let's say I have a 2x squared plus a 50, sorry, x to the third, and then we have a 12x to the fifth. Well, I encourage kids to write this out in expanded form. And this one, the only thing it could have in it is a 2 and a couple x's. But this one, since I know there's a 2 here, I'm going to try to break a 2 out of this 50. It'll be 2 times 25. And then it's x, x, x. This is expanded form. And then this 12, since I know 2 is the kind of the theme here, I'm going to see if I can get a 2 out. 2 times 6. And then it's x, 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 5 x's. Now, what goes into all of them? At first, you might just notice the 2, but there's also 2 x's in each of them, or an xx, also known as an x squared, in each of them. And this 2, and this 2, and this 2. All right, so do you get that there was a 2 and an x and another x, also known as a 2x squared, in each of the terms? So then the 2x squared comes out to the front, and what do I have left? Well, when I divide this by 2x squared, and this by 2x squared, and this by 2x squared, here's what cancels. Everything cancels here, but when it's canceling, it really is turning into a 1. So that's a 1 plus this 2 cancels this 2, the x squared cancels the x squared, and I have 25x plus, and then this 2 cancels the 2, and the x squared cancels the x squared. What do I have left? 6x to the third. So there, I have factored this. Now, it is true that we really ought to write the ones on the inside here in order from the biggest degree to the smallest. So there you go. Okay. So there is a typical factor problem where I can't even factor it further. I'm not going to be able to factor this part any further. It's just I found something that was in each of them. That is called their GCF. All right. Next, we talked about ones where you can factor a trinomial, like x squared plus 5x plus 4, and you can factor that into two parts like this, x, and then a number here and here that will multiply to 4 and add to 5. That must be 4 and 1. And if I want to check myself to make sure I'm doing it right, I can always do the first, which would make x squared, and then these, which would be the lasts, and they make 4, and then the outside and the inside, and those together make 5x. So there, I know I factored it right. This kind you do not have to solve because it doesn't say equals 0. This kind will say equals 0. X squared plus 9x minus 10 is equal to 0. So now I factor it, but I also say equals 0. That means that I will end up having to get two answers here, one for this parenthesis and one for this one. Now the factors are x and x. They always start with that. And then there's two numbers here and here, that are going to multiply to negative 10 and add to 9. So that's positive 10 and negative 1. And if you're not sure if you've got it right, just multiply it all out. You don't have to use the FOIL method. You can go this times this, negative 1x, this times this, negative 10, this times this, x squared, this times this, 10x. When I put it all together, 10x squared and the 10x and the negative x makes plus 9x minus 10, and that's what I had in the first place, right? All right, so then I know I factored it properly. Now that I've got it all factored, I can set this part equal to 0, x minus 1 equals 0. And I can set this part, x plus 10, equal to 0. I said something today that seemed to stick in the kids' heads, and that was these guys climb out of their cave, kind of like a bear. Climbs out of its cave, and then we set it equal to 0. Now I'm going to solve these two little mini equations, and I'll be done. Plus 1, x equals 1, and minus 10, x equals negative 10. So positive 1 and negative 10 are my two answers to this equation. Then the hardest kind we talked about today is the kind where you've got stuff on both sides of the equation. X squared minus 7x plus 10 equals x plus 19. Let me show you how this works. If I could get this stuff out of here, then I could have it equal 0. So how do I get it out of there? I'm going to subtract x from both sides. Now x's can only go with the other x's. They can't go with the x squareds. They can only go with other regular x's. So now I have x squared minus 8x plus 10 equals 19. Now, to get it equal to 0, I've got to get rid of the 19. Taking away 19 from both sides, and I have x squared minus 8x minus 9 equals 0. I made this very intentionally so that this part would factor. And that means we have x. And how do I make a 9 multiply to 9? And how do I have those same numbers add to negative 8? It's got to be a 9 and a 1 that would make an 8. And then I just got to figure out where to put the negatives. If I want this to be a negative middle term, I want the bigger one to be negative. Negative there, positive there. And there we go. I'm double checking at my head here quick. And my outside and my inside are the main ones I have to worry about. And that makes negative 8x. Excellent. Okay. So now, how do I finish? Bring them out of their caves. And then I say equal 0. And then this one's x equals negative 1. And this one, x equals positive 9. Positive 9 and negative 1. All right, there's a good review of the factoring and solving unit. And the test for this is coming up not on our next class day, but on the one after that. So we have one more day of review and then the test. That's all I have for you for today.